Okay, you guys don't want to miss this next session. And everybody's right on time. Thank you very much. Is anybody recording this? Can you make sure to get us that video after? Thank you. Okay, super excited about this one. And it is Kevin Dixie, John Willis, doing a twofer on racial politics or whatever else they want to talk about.
First of all, fuck that. I want my round of applause. Excuse me, say my name again.
Kevin Dixie. Okay, he doesn't get applause, I guess. So I'm just going to hand this over. You can mic or not mic, up to you.
Go.
Oh, okay.
That's my only black friend. I had
What's going on, everybody? Do I even need this damn thing? I probably don't even need this, but how's everybody doing? Good. All right, good. All right, so you know what the conversation's about. So I'm gonna tell you right now, anytime before we receive information, I know we got a lot of teachers and different aspects in this room, but it's all about mindset before you walk in, right? Before you walk into a class or a workshop, get your mind right. So right now, please get your shit together, all right? If I can stand in front of this room and have this conversation and you get sensitive, some shit is wrong. All right, so my name is Kevin Dixie. John's been a good buddy of mine for years now. I've watched him for a long time, mainly for his business practices, but then I started kind of liking the way he was treating some of his unruly customers. It was encouraging. But he called me and said, hey, I just need you to come to this event. Didn't even tell me what it was for, and the point I'm gonna make today is about relationships. I didn't even ask him, I just showed up, okay? So, when we are talking today, I need your mind to be right, and I also need you to understand, I am not scared of you, okay? So let's get that shit really clear real quick, all right? Now, mindset. When we are talking about race and politics today, I get it. Everybody in this room has been pissed off for one reason or another, right? I hope you have, because we've had a lot of reasons to be pissed off over the last several years, even before that. But the first thing I want to talk to you about is this, and I want to get right into it. Race, when it comes to the black race in particular. Now understand something, I don't speak for all black people, I'm not that guy, okay? Just like I don't speak for my own family. They all have different opinions and things of that nature. But I can speak overall in a lot of umbrella factors. So one thing I want to talk about is this. When it comes to race being used, I'm going to tell you that you are helping yourself be a victim of how it's being used against you. For one, you don't have to admit to this if you don't want to. Maybe you heard somebody else say it, okay? So I'm gonna talk about the 13 to 52%. Who knows what I'm talking about when I say that? 13% responsible for 52%. Nobody understands what that is? So nobody's ever heard somebody say, why is 13% of the population responsible for 52% of the violent crimes? Okay, well, that's interesting because that is used to, on especially right-leaning political networks, and I don't have a right or a left mission, by the way. Fuck them both. We out. Yeah. But with that being said, I understand what comes from certain outlets for certain reasons, right? You gotta understand, guys, this stuff is marketing. It's about ciphering power and votes and influence from all of us. We have to understand that. But I listen to that a lot. I listen to people say, hey, well, can you explain to me why 13% of the population is responsible for 52% of the violent crimes? I'm like, well, I'll just answer that question with a question. Let me ask you guys all a question. I'm gonna rub a crystal ball here, okay? And at 7 p.m., Walmart's parking lot next Thursday, you are going to get into a gunfight. I can't tell you what the person looks like. I can't tell you if you're gonna win or lose the fight. I have no idea. I can just tell you that you're gonna be a victim of a violent crime and it's going to involve you using your firearm. That's all I know. The only way we can get that to stop is for you to take option B. Option B, you get to rub this ball and say, hey, I don't want any problems with anybody, but what has to happen, with you opting out of the gunfight that we don't know if you're gonna win or lose, is that some child, a kid, in that local vicinity that you are not gonna be able to help, you don't know who it is, could be your own, could be somebody else's, will get raped and molested by that exact same person that you were gonna have the gunfight with. So if you opt out of the gunfight, they get to go violate the child. How many people are taking the gunfight?
And friends.
Good, all right? So we can say that the protection of our children, although not ideal to deal with violent crime, we'll take violent crime any day of the week over our children being violated, right? Doesn't matter what fucking color the kid is. It shouldn't. Well, one reason why I tell people to really be careful about when you hear that 13% of the population is responsible for 52% of the violent crime, and you got guys like me that are sitting there watching the reactions. Interesting. Since we just agreed that our children are our most precious commodity, right? And we will protect them at all costs, even if it means putting ourselves in danger. That means our kids come before violent crime, right? Who's responsible for 62% of child molestations and rapes in this country? White men. Now imagine if I'm on TV trying to have a debate about protecting our kids. We know sex trafficking is up. We know all this shit is getting rampant, right? Internet is kind of responsible for this shit. You get easy access to kids now. But however, the numbers are up. Now imagine me sitting on national TV trying to have a conversation about how we deal with pedophiles and predators and things like that, or they call them MAPs now, minor attracted persons. Whatever.
Might have their feelings.
Trying to normalize that shit.
How would it feel to you to watch me talk about we need to do something about the white men in this country molesting children? How would you take that? Be pretty fucking personal, wouldn't it? Like if I look at you and say, hey, tell me about the white men raping kids. You're gonna be like, when did I rape a kid? Like, what the hell are you talking about, right? So imagine how I feel when somebody hits me with that 13 to 52%. Okay? And that's what I want you to understand. And that's what I mean by your politics or the people that you might favor, even if it's not for politically. When they start having conversations like that, a guy like me on the back end that's been behind the news channel networks, that's seen all the videos, and I'm looking at rooms like this where people are like, yeah, do something about those people. I'm like, who the fuck are you talking to? Right? But that's how we have to understand how we're being played against each other. Just like I'll say that example in a room like this because we're just having a conversation, I would never use that in an argument. To me, it's mean, it's vile, and it's accusing all of you of something that you haven't done. Right? So it's not fair. However, when that's being used against us, we see things like the George Floyd situation, and even more recent, the Ahmaud Arbery situation, right? And I saw that be leveraged against people a lot. Because what did they do, right? And maybe some of us were guilty of it. What did they do? They leveraged good old boys protecting their neighborhood from a jogger, non-jogger, whatever the case may be, right? Just did the right thing. Let me ask you guys a question. How many people, when they first heard about that case, heard people making it racial? Right? Even before we got any of the, like immediately, right off the bat, right? Okay, we all understand, hey, when something first happens, you might want to wait at least a week or two to kind of see what else comes out, right? All right, so in the meantime, we're trying to have a conversation about the Second Amendment and about the importance of protecting yourself. And I got a large portion of Americans, a large portion, some wearing your favorite 1776 shirts, saying, well, no, he was a thug, which by the way, when you say the word thug, that's code word for saying the N-word to us, period. Especially depending on the way you use it, right? So it's cool. You ain't gonna roll for my feathers because I can fight and I got a gun, so I'm all right, right? However, when I'm looking at that, I'm looking at people, everybody on both sides of it, right? They're like, hey, no, this happened. And these people are like, no, this didn't happen. You got to prove it. And we all saw the video footage. We all got the details, and then we got a conviction at the end of it, right? Did anybody hear what happened to the federal case, the federal hate crime case that the McMichaels were up against? Anybody know anything about that? Yeah, because it didn't happen. They essentially said, we're going to let that go. Do you know why they said we're going to let it go? How many of you, and it's okay, we're just in a room talking. How many of you were kind of on the side when you first heard the story of the McMichaels? Okay, so it's fine. Look, I'm not gonna do that to you. I'm pretty sure you got a gun too. It's all right. It's all right.
When they first announced it, I mean,
Right, a lot of people did. But what happened after that is that all the recordings of Travis McMichael and all the Facebook posts came out. They came out in federal court to where he said people like me are monkeys. They need to be killed and murdered. Okay, so. For a lot of Americans, they made it political. You're looking at that and you're saying, well, no, these guys were protecting their neighborhood, they were doing this and that. CNN gets it, they spin it one way. Fox gets it, they spin it another way. And what happens is when me and you see each other, we're looking at whatever mainstream has fed us and wherever we're getting our information from and we're fighting. Because America doesn't want to believe things like racism exists. I hate to tell you, but it does. It does. Do you mean to tell me we're going to eliminate racism off this planet? When? All it takes is for one asshole to be a racist, and it exists. Period. All right? However, Rooms like this and rooms like where I come from are being pitted against each other when we have situations like that. How many of us can just agree, now especially if we have all the facts, that Michaels are assholes?
Right.
Right? They're overzealous assholes. They deserve to be in prison. Right? In that situation, he was a racist because he not only said what he said it publicly, he said it in private. Everybody started telling on him. They started sending in the proof. And guess what he did? What did he say? Does anybody know? Don't say it. Does anybody know what Travis said when he shot Ahmaud? Anybody hear that? So the GBI had to testify when information came out. And I'm saying this because I want you to understand how you're being leveraged against each other. GBI investigator is sitting on stand and he is white guy, bald, sitting there and, he's an investigator and giving his resume and all that crap. And he goes over what had to be said. What was said after McMichael Travis shot Ahmaud. And when you're looking at people talk about, oh, he wasn't a jogger, he was just a thug, he was doing this and he was doing that. Okay, fine. When he shot him, he said, and we got kids in the room, so I'm gonna be really polite, effing in hard ER. Okay? And then imagine being me and watching hundreds of thousands of people say that that isn't racist. That isn't racist. You know what's easier for you to say? He's a bit of a jerk. It was, and screw that guy. Guess what? Now we don't have a reason. We don't have a reason to fight, but you know what happens? Your politicians get a hold of it. They'll say to you, well, no, we have to get all the rest of the information. Well, we've had the information for 2 weeks. He's just ignoring the fact that it came out. And you're being pitted against each other. All right? And so a lot of people, for example, won't come to rooms like this. Several of you have walked up to me today like, kind of appreciate you being here. And I'm like, why wouldn't I be here? Because this is my fucking country too. So why wouldn't I be here? I'll just sit with kids in the room. Why wouldn't I come? So another thing that I want to point out to you guys is this, and it might be a little interesting to hear, but you need to know it because the room is so different to me. My community where I come from doesn't hate you, man. We don't. All right? Do you think that there's anything about the guy that's sitting in office right now that makes me happy? So even when let's take the corona situation, right? COVID and the mandates and all this and that. When you saw advertisement telling you to stay in the house, what did it look like? Was it like from political figures? Was it from like your local doctors and hospitals? Celebrities? Okay. All right. You know what they gave us? A rap video. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Backs that ass up, right? So imagine the insult when we are trying to have a conversation about the science, the data, tell me why you're saying the thing, and you give me a rap video. It was an insult. I'm like, I don't know if you understand. I'm a kid from St. Louis. I'm from the bricks. I'm from the mud. I'm from sugar sandwiches. I'm from poverty. I got 3 fucking college degrees hanging on the wall. I'm no idiot, right? So give me information and data, but they gave us a rap video. And then when they gave us on top of that, like everybody we got the celebrity push, right? So when I look up and I say, hey, we need to have a rational conversation about this thing, and I'm seeing everyone get upset, the next thing that came out was, oh, hey, all white people, you need to feel bad because the black people are dying at a higher rate. But I had it twice and I did that. What are you talking about? Show me the data and the statistics. But you know what? Here's where you're being fooled. In your community, who comes from like a area that's not rural? Any area but just not rural, like you're born and raised. How far was your grocery store from your house?
A couple blocks.
A couple blocks, right? Who else raised their hand? How far is your grocery store, sir? A couple blocks away? Cool. So let me tell you, one of the reasons that they came out with the data and they said that, hey, African American communities are being more impacted is because of diet. Now look, science is science, food is food. Food is either good for you or bad for you, right? We get it. I mean, I've had a little bit in my life. All right, we get it. However, what they didn't want to address, the left, if you will, are saying, hey, you guys are dying at a higher rate. You need to make sure that you go get the jab. You need to make sure you go do that because everybody else is going to survive it more than you. But then you're not talking about the diet. But I know why they didn't talk about the diet. You ever heard of a food desert before? Yep. I grew up in a food desert. My closest grocery store is like 2.5 miles. Okay? where people really didn't have that many cars and public transportation was iffy. Okay? So people get their food from a corner store. I'm pretty sure we've all heard that term before. I think in the Northeast they call them bodegas or whatever, right? And guess what's in there? Roman noodles. The cheapest pork steak. I thought they used to be real steak too. I'm so disappointed. The cheapest pork steak you can find, chips, right? Sugary juices and things like that, right? But they didn't want to address that. They just told us we were dying at a higher rate. And then when I turned around and tried to have a conversation with a room that looked just like this, the thing was like, hey, you need to recognize and make sure that you understand that they are pandering to you. They're telling you that this is happening to you. And I'm like, hey, could you do me a favor? Can you tell me why you're not helping bring attention to the legislation we keep proposing about food deserts in our communities? Well, no. Well, they're not fucking helping, either are you. Right? So, how many people like Joe Biden? That's a good number of people. But let me bring this full circle to where I want. I guess I should have let you talk too.
No, you go.
Okay. Let me bring this even full circle about how America is being divided when it comes to even our sitting president. I am not new. Everybody running around screaming F Joe Biden. Man, I've been at this since they stood on TV and called me a super president. Okay, I've been at this a long time.
Yeah.
How many people, and it's okay to be honest, I want you to be honest. How many people in this room think that systemic racism is a myth? Only one person thinks it's a myth? Come on, man. I know you. Damn it, how many people think it's a myth? Okay, one, we got, what is this, like, okay, maybe 3% of the room? All right, cool. I'll see your myth and raise you. Because this is all about exchanging information, right? I have a lot of people say that to me, so let me ask you a question. If in general, maybe you haven't said it, but in general, you have two major parties, right, in this country, unfortunately, but we have two. Out of the two, which one is called the party of racism? The left one or the right one? The right one?
Really the left, it's the racist party.
So, that's exactly where you start getting the miscommunication. And your community is the one that's on the right, because that's what you've been told. But in our community, we understand who it is. Now, that's not excluding the right, but if you ask anybody who looks like me, they'll say the left. Here's where you've been tricked at. Let's use 1994 for an example. So you say there's no such thing as systemic racism for the few people that did. Cool, not a problem. We understand first, let's understand a system. Does a system have to be just federal? No. Can it be local? Yes. Can it be statewide? Yes. Region? Yes. Sure it can. Okay. So in 1994, we get this thing called the crime bill. Anybody ever heard of it? Yeah. All right, cool. Crime bill targets people that look like me. Joe Biden stands in front of Congress. He goes in front of the Senate. He gets on TV, him and Clinton and a few others. And they say, hey, I don't care how they got to be how they are. I don't care what happened. My family, and he started naming different family members, needs to feel safe walking down the street. I also don't want them in the classroom with my kids, because I don't want to create a racial genre. Now, I'm not making this up, and he said it on TV. He's dumb enough to be recorded saying it, right? Now, when I hear that, I'm like, okay, cool. So let me ask you a question. When they sent the 1994 crime bill in white areas, what were they after?
Okay.
Guns. What did they ban? Assault rifles, right? In our community, what did they go after? They went after me. Do you understand how you even got the assault weapons ban in the 1994 crime bill? I'll give you the short, cute version. I wrote up a whole thing on Instagram. Here's how you got it. You had Republicans sitting there saying, hey, you guys are giving too much money in community services, welfare services, community outreach, whatever you want to call it. You're giving too much money to that. You need to pull some of that money back. All right? The other side said, well, you guys we want the guns. All right? You want something, let's talk about this thing. So what they did was they traded. The conservatives helped. 49 conservatives voted in favor of the 94 crime bill, by the way. They helped with the assault weapons ban, and in turn, our party put us in prison. Okay? Then what happened, after you come and you take 300, 400,000 leaders of a household out of the household, what happens? What man here runs his household? Does your family have an impact if I grabbed you right now and yanked you out of it? Right? Is discipline going to go out the window to a degree? Right? What about leadership? What about cultivating your family, your kids, their mental, their physical, right? Their spiritual, right? Not saying, look, Mama Bear, not saying you can't do it. But we all understand that the man has a place in his household, right? So what if I told you that at one time I went and took massive amounts of men out the household and then convinced you that the animals are just running loose? But that's what you fell for. And so when we get to systemic racism, okay, cool. How many of you right now can go outside of your front door, stand at the trunk of your car, wave at your neighbor, and a cop car drive up the street, and he just keep going? How many people would that be their experience? You know, maybe the cop gives you like a, hey buddy, you know, peace sign or something, keeps driving. All right, in the city of St. Louis, when I grew up, it was illegal for us to stand outside. So you want to talk about why you think people have a certain viewpoint of police? Imagine standing outside. Police chiefs work for who? Who does a chief of police normally work for in major areas? The mayor, right? So when the mayor appoints the chief, they set down laws to the lieutenants, captains, lieutenants, so forth and so on, right? So who wrote the law that stated that you could lock me up just for standing outside? And if you say that that's racist, how is that not systemic racism? How is it not systemic racism when we have something called the Fair Sentencing Act? Now, why do we have something in 2010 called the Fair Sentencing Act? It's because you guys could go get cocaine, right, in its purest form, right off the boat from Colombia. I know some of y'all know what it is. You could get it, draw you a line, maybe get caught, you got a certain penalty. My community, you have to take it and dilute it, make this thing called crack, right? Which, by the way, systemic system. Who taught us how to make crack cocaine?
CIA.
CIA. CIA not only taught us how to do it, put it in our communities, okay, and then said we're going to give you a harsher penalty when you're caught with it, even though it's diluted. So when Reagan helped with that, contra, and I don't think I have to tell this room about that kind of stuff, I think you guys probably know. When he helped with that, what went missed is we were going to not only put the more dangerous drug in urban areas, we were also going to charge them with heavy penalties. And then Reagan basically gave an alley-oop, if you're a basketball fan, he gave an alley-oop to the Clintons' Law and Order crime bill. Well, they came through and decimated our areas. Now, I'll add to that. When did civil rights end? When was the civil rights era? People will argue, but really 68 is kind of my answer, right? When it ended, so to speak. But can you legislate morality? You can't, right? So let's just be fair. Let's say it's 1980 by the time America caught it, right? Where I could go in any restaurant you could go into and I could have true freedom. Let's just argue 1980. So, systemic racism doesn't exist, huh? Well, why couldn't I go into a restaurant and eat with you? Now, I was born in 79. And I remember when I was born, there were certain restaurants mom would tell me that, oh, we don't go in there because I still wasn't allowed, even though by law I should have. I should have been able to go. So when you are looking and saying, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, well, imagine this. How old is America? 200 and, how old is she now? Oh, say that again?
Sorry, I wasn't.
246 years old. Now, in the history of the world, is America still a toddler? Absolutely. She's a toddler. She's learning her way through this thing. She's screwed up. A lot of ways to go, right? Boom, we can agree with that. But at 246 years old, we agree she's still trying to get it together, right? Right? Now, how the hell are you guys looking at my community saying fix it in 40 years? When every time we get a leg up, you have legislation by like our sitting president that comes through and says, yeah, let's hit the reset button. Hey, as a matter of fact, you know what we'll do? Hey, Asian community, you guys are being attacked a little bit, right? But we still kind of want your influence, we want your favor. So we're gonna give you $30 million, and then we're gonna blame the black people on it, all right? So every clipping was of a black person attacking an Asian person, right? It's the way it was being spun, it's how it's being leveraged against you. And I'm like, well, all right, that's cool. Hey, you attack somebody, whatever. I don't really give a damn what color they are, what color you are. But then I turn around and I look and I'm like, oh shit, we get 30 million bucks too. What do we get $30 million for? Fucking crack pipes. Now, it's the smoking kits, right, which have different things in them. They have condoms, they have syringes, and we can see those kind of efforts going around the globe and things like that. But why in the world would there even be a mention or the inclusion of a crack pipe? That doesn't feel a little bit targeted? A little bit racial? What if I told you in my area, how much time I got left?
As long as you want.
What if I told you in my area, how is your school system paid for? Taxes, right? Pretty much. I mean, you get some donations here and there, but tax is the base, right? Cool. So from a 30,000 foot view, if I wanted to make your school awesome, right, we're probably going to need a good tax base, right? Might not be the only money, but it's going to be what really keeps it afloat. So if I know that you, and you all want this school to run great, but I don't want it to run great for whatever reason. So I come in and I make sure that I arrest you under the 1994 crime bill, for an example. I use that illegal stop, and it's called street demonstration, by the way, was the name of the law. In New York, they call it stop and frisk, right? So I illegally search you, maybe arrest you for something I found on you, give you a criminal record. So instead of you being an entrepreneur in certain aspects or the manager or something, now you're just a laborer, right? You're just the guy sweeping the floor because you got a criminal record, right? Cool. That makes your income go down, right? The lower your income, what do you pay less of? You pay it at the same rate, but you're getting less money, right? So if you're making 80 grand a year and I'm making 24 grand a year, the money I'm paying out is a little bit different. Now, on top of that, I can also set your kids up for failure to say, well, if I get rid of you, then there's going to be at least half a chance that this kid is going to kind of follow in those footsteps.
Right.
So now all of a sudden I keep that tax bracket down here. And then when you come to me and say, hey, our school system suck, I'm going to say, well, we're not having tax money. Now, what did I do? I just made sure that you never made enough money to have good education. Because we are taxing you at the same rate. But we understand that we want to keep you as our laborers and we want to keep you down. So I'm going to stand up there and say, it's all kind of problems and we're working on it and we're fixing it. But really, I want to make sure that you're paying less tax money. I don't want you to grow up. I don't want your finances to grow up. Because guess what happens when you start making a lot of money and you have to work hard for it? You start paying attention to this shit, don't you? Like, who am I paying taxes to? Why am I paying taxes to that? Matter of fact, who's in charge of this? Who is my alderman? Hey, who's responsible for this road over here that I gotta pay for? You start asking questions. I don't need you asking questions, I need you to survive. And I need you to be more focused on surviving than you are thriving. So I keep you down here. And then when it comes to the media, and it comes to politics, as soon as you start complaining, I go, well, ask him. He's the Republican at the federal level that didn't let this law pass. That got shit to do with what I'm dealing with locally. But you fooled me to believe that it does. Those are just two easy examples of systemic racism. So what happens is when you guys might hear it on your major news networks, you go, what the fuck are you talking about? Everybody's got the equal opportunity I have. You can do just what I can do, and I can. I can. I made it out. I made it out. That doesn't mean everybody else got the same favor from God. It just doesn't. Right? And people often say, well, well, how do you know this to be a fact? You guys hear about the inner city from where? News.
I grew up in.
You grew up in it? Who did? What city you grew up in?
I grew up in Baton Rouge.
Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So you will be able to relate. All right? Where you grew up?
Went to school downtown Kansas City, edge of the hood.
Okay.
I grew up in San Bernardino, California.
I heard it was nice weather out there.
I grew up in Gardena.
San Diego, right?
Hell of a jail there.
So when you grow up in some of these more urban and harsh environments, man, let me tell you, when I started hearing shit about what's not happening and how fair everything is, and I mean, it's not. Hey, when you guys grew up, everybody that said they grew up in an inner city or close to it, how many times did you see the police have a positive interaction with the community?
Not one single time.
Not one single time, right? So what up now? Now this being said, understand something. I spent 10 years of my life putting people in cages. I have a DSA, right? So this ain't about hating the cops. And I tell people all the time, from a high level, understand something. I just said the mayor is assigning the chief. So who am I really blaming for all the fucking problems? Well, the mayor, right? That's who really needs to hold the boatload. But what happens every time a cop does something on the street that was passed down from City Hall? What does the mayor do to the cop? Talking to the wolves, right? Right? Or make a promise about we're gonna do better. You mean like what you wrote you're gonna do better? So when I have a lot of people saying, oh, well, you guys have equal opportunity, you have a fair chance, you can do this and you can do that, I'm like, yeah, in a way you're right, but in a way you're not right. All right, how many people in the room, and I'm not, look, we just having a conversation. How many of the people in the room like Trump?
I used to.
Yeah.
Okay, about half the room. And look, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Great too bad, right? Nothing wrong with that. Right? But how many people like him for something about what I'm about to say? He had his own money, so he couldn't be bought. Whether you like it or not, he don't say what's on his mind. You don't have to worry about him flat out lying to you to make you feel comfortable. Right? Damn it, the man, he's just gonna say what he gotta say. And so when people say there is no such thing as systemic racism, I'm like, okay, well, tell me why President Trump created, which I don't like the name, but he created the Platinum Plan and listed out roughly 28 unfair practices against African American communities. So why would a man that doesn't have to lie, can't be bought, and tells it like it is, put that plan in action? I'm just asking a question. Why would he also have to sit down with HBCUs and say, you guys should not have to be coming here every year asking me for funding? Now, I'll give him that. He said it, like, this is stupid. Why do you have to come up here every year? Who's making you come kiss the ring once a year to get your funding? Here's a bulk of money, I'll see you in 5 to 10 years, right? Why would he have to do that if no practices were being done unfairly? Why do they have to do that? Why would they have to in 2010 come out with a fair sentencing act if we always had equal sentencing? Why would Joe Biden and both Clintons, which I think they're roommates, I don't remember the last time I seen her touch that man. But why would they both come out screaming, I'm sorry for the 94 crime bill if they did nothing wrong? And if the left is the party of racism, especially for what they did in 94, then what do we call the 42 or 49 Republicans that supported that bill?
Right.
And if we can say that the left is the party of racism, that is, off the few examples I gave you that are running these urban areas to the ground, I know we've all heard that before. If we can say that, then what do you think the people in that community feel about the people that are enforcing the racist left laws? So when you get on TV, you're like, not you in particular, but you know what I'm saying? You should respect the police. Yeah, all right. Keep that same energy when you just come out your front door to get groceries out your trunk and you can be locked up. Right. Imagine how you would feel, right? Now, I'm not saying people in urban areas don't do nothing wrong. Maybe I've done a couple things too. I'm not saying crime doesn't happen. I'm not saying things can't get out of control. I'm not saying any of that. And I'm not saying all cops are bad. I'm saying when you're being leveraged against each other. Now let me make this very, very clear, because this is a balance that always needs to happen. I am not anti-law enforcement. I am pro-justice, period. Period, down the line, point blank. However, when we are talking about the people that are showing up to do the job, we're talking about the good people, that just showing up to work, right? They're not coming there for nefarious reasons, they're just showing up to work. Still think about how it feels when you have people passing stuff like stop and frisk, when you have people passing things like street demonstration, and when people are being told to go out and deprive this community of their finances, because remember, we can't get a lot of taxes off of them, right? We kind of covered the elementary version of that. So if we can't get a lot of taxes off of them, how else do we get money from them? We find them. What's the best way to find them? Because home ownership is at a minimum, because most people rent, or a lot of them do, a large percentage. So you're not going to go after the investors that own the properties. No, why would you want to do that? Because they probably invest in other areas in your area, right? You don't really want to piss them off, especially the big ones that come in and buy 10, 12 homes at a time. You don't want to make them mad. So how else do we get more money from these people? Why do you think Minneapolis, being one of the cities, you just stated that you can't pull people over for certain things like invalid place on their car? Am I saying, well, I don't know. I don't like paying the government money, so maybe we shouldn't have to register our cars. But at the same time, they had to pull back on what they had been allowing the officers to do to initiate stops. Well, why is that? Why would they do that? You think that just came up because of people said, well, it was because of George Floyd. How? George Floyd didn't get pulled over. That wasn't about traffic. All right? Now we have a couple other incidents that were, but no, they stopped that because it was wrong. Because we're being taxed to death, because we're being arrested. And so when we get on TV and we say, hey, something's wrong, what happens to people like me is they say, no, you shut up. Shut up right now. Okay? They squander me. The last time I checked my social media stats, my reach is 273 million people. They let me talk to about 30,000 of them. Okay? But why is that? Because you know what they feed you to piss you off? Who do they give you instead? Little 3-letter group. BLM, right? And what happens? You see that shit? I think we talked about that earlier, right? You see BLM get up there and you're like, what is this? They're tearing up the cities. This is horrendous. And they did. They were a terrorist organization. I kind of agree with that. And I'm talking about the organization itself, not the people. But what do you think happened to the sentiment when all you're doing is yelling at BLM? The organization. What do you think happens to the sentiment? Who knows how BLM got started? So, interesting little point. I'm from St. Louis. Where did Black Lives Matter start? Ferguson. Ferguson is a suburb of St. Louis. It was not started that way. It was called the Ferguson 100. And so what I want you guys to know before I have to get off of here is that there are plenty of people doing good work. I myself run a community outreach program called Aiming for the Truth. To this date, we help people with mental health crisis, right? Because if I can send a boy or girl overseas for 4 years and they come back with PTSD, imagine what the hell happens to these kids that are growing up in 20 years of it, right? So we're helping people with mental health. Last time I counted, I put 120 fathers back into the lives of their kids to help erase these generational curses, right? The last time I checked, we got 40 people the ability to read and write, right? Kind of fixing what the school system didn't do, right? We're not making excuses. So I tell you guys that to show you I'm not unique. So when I see a group like BLM, imagine how the hell I feel, right? Now, that group that BLM hijacked, and she said it earlier, and she was absolutely correct. It's called the Ferguson 100. Ferguson 100 was a group of men who wanted to go out and fix their community. Not just Ferguson. Ferguson is not this ghetto you guys been convinced that it is. It's just not. They started in Ferguson, right? But St. Louis was the region they were going after, and they just wanted to go out and help. If it's feeding families, if it's giving young boys counseling, mentoring, whatever it is. There were 100 men that made a pledge to go make their communities better. Now, who can respect that, right? What happened is, BLM, the organization, or the money first, rather, showed up, right? And when the money shows up, one of the leaders of that group, a young man by the name of Darren Seals. Darren Seals was like, no. He called it out before it was famous to call it out, saying, they are all about the LGBTQ movement, and I'm not against that, but this is not what this is. So he said no, and he said no loudly. Darren Seals was found with a 45 hole in his head and set on fire. I mean, right after. We're talking weeks, okay? And then all of a sudden you get this organization called BLM that then on your TVs are standing up representing me, right? Because the last time I checked, it was supposed to be Black Lives Matter and it was based off the blood of black men. Well, how in your own about section do you never mention me? How do you only mention your mission to help the LGBTQIA plus community? That's fine, but that should be a mission over there. Why does it have to hijack this mission, right? But because it was never about Black lives, and this is how the country got fooled. On one network, they put up the rioting, the looting, and all the crazy stuff going on. What they wouldn't show you until we start having cell phone video come out is half the people doing the shit weren't even black. Weren't even black. And didn't live in the areas. Then we started learning about this little group called Antifa. Okay? Cool. Well, it makes sense though, right? You know, kind of put some people in, have them do some destruction. Okay, that makes sense. But people are still yelling. Black people, Black Lives Matter. Every time I put up something that might happen to a black man, some idiot in the comments is like, oh, I thought Black Lives Matter. If you really want kids in the room, I'll tell you what he could put in his mouth. Okay? However, it's not a responsible conversation to have, and unfortunately it's being had too loud. What if I was to tell you that the same way you have a problem with Black Lives Matter, the organization is the same problem I have? What if I was to tell you that when people are yelling at black people about that, that majority of us feel the same way? Well, stop yelling at me about it. And I don't come asking you how the Klan's doing. Like, I'm asking you about it. Right? Like, I don't know, but this is the way I feel, right? I don't rock with it. I don't support the sentiment. Yes. The actions, no. The people that are running it, no. I never have. But what you didn't see blasted across the TV screens. Remember when it happened? The Breonna Taylor situation happened. We had the chaos kickoff in Louisville, right? So when Louisville had this incident, did anybody see the piece of good news that came out of Louisville? It would have warmed your heart if you've seen it, so you would have known if you've seen it. Okay, so in Louisville, because black people hate cops, right? Right? I mean, let's face facts. That's what America's telling you, right? Okay, cool. So Louisville, there was a riot officer that got separated from the squad. Okay. Now it's a bunch of y'all in this room. And if I was here to control you and I had 15, 20 buddies with me and they disappeared, I might be a little nervous, okay? He gets separated. He gets separated from the squad, all by himself in the middle of it. What they didn't show you across mainstream media to the degree that they showed the chaos is that about 14 black men linked arms, put his back against the wall and surrounded him. And said, that's not what we're here for. But that's not the sexy thing to show you. The sexy thing to show you is that I'm an uncontrollable animal. I want chaos. I hate America. And then what happens? I say that, they tell you I say that, somebody else comes back with, leave America. Next thing you know, we're just throwing that ball back and forth over the net, right? And we're arguing. So when it comes down to make a decision about policy for people, we're lost. We're just trying to be spiteful to whoever we think disagrees with us. Last example I'll give you. When we say systemic racism, or I'm not picking on you. I think it's a bald guy thing. You know. This is when I started civil rights and Second Amendment advocacy. I had like a head full of hair. And don't anymore.
Part your head out.
It does. So in St. Louis, we had one of the riots kick off. This was actually in St. Louis, not in Ferguson. And I'm staying in touch with a couple of my buddies that work at the department. And this news story came out, and one of my boys said, "Hey man," he gave me some insight. He was like, "Hey, look, you pay attention to this because Captain so-and-so is over this. You might find it interesting." I'm like, "Okay." So I watched it from the back end, kind of get the backseat information, that underground networker we were talking about, kind of know what's coming down the pipe. And there was an incident that occurred. Now, when Ferguson happened, I think a lot of law enforcement agencies around the country learned from that, right? Like, from a tactical standpoint, that was a failure, right? So they learned from it. And so they started putting UCs in the crowds, right? And the UC is just gonna, they might take a picture, they might radio in to people that they think are, going above and beyond, right? Maybe starting fires or flipping cars or whatever. And so St. Louis City put a UC, had a couple of them walking, in the crowd. And they made sure that these guys were, actually commissioned officers, not just some undercovers, right? So these are commissioned officers working plain clothes. And some officers who were non-black were sharing text messages with each other before their shift. So they're hanging out and they're sharing text messages with each other, saying that they can't wait, in essence, they can't wait to beat up one of the black protesters. And they got to work. And they did. They beat up a black protester. They took him to processing where I used to work. And when he got a chance to actually say who he was, guess who he was? He was a cop. They picked him out the blue and beat his ass because he was black. And you want to know why people feel the way that they feel? Now, does that mean that the other 35 cops out working that day would have did the same thing? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But does it make you feel better if the ATF kicks in your house and your neighbor's like, well, shit, it wasn't me? Right? It should have a ripple effect. So understand that these are incidents, and I know I went around the globe a lot, but in 45 minutes, I'm just trying to give you a 30,000 square foot view. But understand this, I don't speak for everybody. Like, I don't speak for extremists on any side of this thing, right? I can't. I can only talk to the middle, right? And in the middle, what I want to tell you is, we don't hate you. Nobody hates you. I don't have time for hating you. As a matter of fact, if you want to really talk about it, I was bred in my area by the shit that was going on to be fearful of you and kill people that look like me. I wasn't bred to be your problem. I was bred to cause my self-extinction. We were always told in high school, one thing you better not do, if there is a white boy in your school, don't fight that white boy. Don't go to jail. I'll go kill somebody that look like me. Good luck with finding out. But I was taught, don't you put your hands on a white person. It's gonna be a penalty, right? So nobody's coming up telling you you're responsible for racism. So stop saying that shit, right? Because if I thought you were responsible for trying to put me in slavery, you wouldn't be breathing, okay? And an interesting fact while we're talking about that is staying with 1776, some other information I want to give you guys. It is for your education. It is not to make, or perspective rather. It is not to make you feel bad, but how many people in this room enjoy and revere the day 1776 or that year? How many people enjoy it, love it, care about it, give a fuck? Damn, only about 10% of you? Man, you got the wrong crowd. Yeah. Cool, in 1776, what's so important about that day? Right, freedom, right, essentially, okay. So when you're having your conversation about freedom, when people don't align with freedom, one of the things that have come up is 1776. Like, hey, you maybe need to do a little history digging, understand things, get some clarity, right? And I've had people always come up to me, I'll come to go to events all the time, maybe they don't know who I am, and they're like, hey, you know about 1776? No, educate them. Right? And they'll come and they're like, yeah, this is freedom, and I'm glad to see you here, because, like, look at me and look at the room, right? And like, glad to see you here, and you understand freedom in 1776. Well, when you're out having a conversation with people, it's about perspective. Maybe when you're trying to expand the conversation of freedom, because you're not wrong, 1776 is a very, very important date, not just to American history, to world history. I'll tell them what the world would look like if that didn't happen, all right? We'll all be drinking tea with milk, all right?
Exactly.
Right.
Not coffee.
But in 1776, was I free?
No.
So why the hell would I be celebrating freedom? Why would that date align with me? Because we like for people to be educated, right? Like if I'm gonna debate you on something and I don't know anything, you're gonna say, you probably need to go do a little research and come back to me, right? Which is fair. Don't debate me on something you don't know anything about. So when people go back and they do education, they're gonna be like, well, hell, 1776, man, I mean, that's cool. The date's very valid. But for my history, like, I'm not gonna align with it the same, right? It wasn't for me. Hell, as a matter of fact, I'll give you something better. How many people have heard about Juneteenth? How many people saw negative promotions or negative comments about Juneteenth? So here's what I'm gonna tell you, that even if you were guilty of it, you should stop. And when you are having a conversation with somebody else that has an opinion about it, just educate them. I'm not asking you to change minds and hearts, just asking you to share information and perspective, that's it. So in 1863, everybody was supposed to be free, okay? Supposed to be free. Didn't happen. Texas is a great example, mainly where it occurred. For 2 years, roughly 250,000 people were held in slavery because they didn't know that you weren't supposed to be a slave anymore. Okay, 5 in the morning. So they were held, 250,000 people, which we can extrapolate, but what would 250,000 people be now? Might be a lot of folks, right, with the population boom, I'm sorry. So 250,000 people held there. All right. 1865 is when they found out. Now all of a sudden everybody understands that they're free. That's where Juneteenth comes from. It's our celebration of complete freedom. So imagine how people that are educated on that field, when they see people that don't look like them saying, oh, it's stupid, it shouldn't be a federal holiday. Well, 1776 is. So why can't I have a federal holiday that says this is when everyone who related, looked like me, associated with me, says we're actually free in this country. But imagine how I feel when I see you mocking that. Do you think I want to have a conversation with you about Joe Biden after that? You could be 1,000% right about your policies, about, hey, this is how we fix it. You could be educating me better than any school could have. But do you think I'm listening to you after I saw you mock that day? Because remember, we want people to be educated. We want them to be researched. Do you know what Tennessee did in response to that? So we're saying that in Tennessee? Look up Tennessee's ratification of their constitution. In 1865, in response to that, or it might have been 64, but I think it was 65, Tennessee ratified their state constitution. They ratified it to say that all men shall have the right to keep and bear arms, and they changed it to all white men shall have the right to keep and bear arms. So, I look at this thing called the Second Amendment a little bit different. The fight's a little bit different, but my perspective's a little bit different. So 1776, although important, valuable, we need to talk about it. I don't mind it being on t-shirts, put it on more. I can get it out there. It needs to be talked about. Nothing against it. But stop mocking Juneteenth. Because it's a very pivotal date. And you know what happens? When you stand and you say 1776, and I say right on, do you know about 1865? And you're like, shit, I do now. And then we can start having this conversation about this thing called freedom. Right? Can you go change what happened in 1800s? Neither the fuck can I. But what we can change is the conversation we're having today. What we can do, is stop being afraid to ask valid questions. Stop getting on Facebook trying to be the person with the snarkiest comment. How many minutes are there?
3 more minutes.
3 more. Stop being the person on Facebook with the snarkiest comment. Stop trying to be the person that just says, I'm free, screw you. I don't want to hear about you. Okay. We talked about networking earlier. How many of you guys visit urban areas for work, family, whatever? Okay. Now, how many of you grew up there?
I lived there.
Live there? So, what, we say about 4% of the room? I know you were too, right? About 4% of the room? Cool. I did. All right, so what happens if we actually start having a conversation to align with freedom? Doesn't mean we're going to agree on everything. But we get to the point to where we talk. We're not listening to the politicians. We're not listening to the news. Do you really think they care about you? Us. We have a conversation. Because man, we can take it out by the chicken coop and box and eat barbecue later on. We don't have to be enemies. Right? I don't feel like boxing today. Just saying. Right? But we need to get to the point to where we can have a conversation. Failure to do so is going to keep us at odds. We are not going to achieve freedom. It is going to remain an illusion. Because if you wind up in an urban area when we're talking about networking, and thank you so much for bringing up Harriet Tubman. I don't know if you guys noticed the shirt, but yeah, Harriet would have smacked the shit out of you. And I put that up there for people that are voluntarily giving up their freedom. All right? Now, what happens if you don't network? Because everybody says when the world comes to an end, they're going to go where? To the woods, right?
Yeah, good luck.
John probably just ain't going to let you come on this property. You better be a good friend, right? You better bring something to the table, right? I ain't running out here. Well, yeah, I will. But in general, most people that come from where I come from ain't doing it. Woods? What the hell you mean, woods? Hell no. But what happens if it's reversed? What if we do align with freedom? Just to use the networking thing for an example. What if we do align with freedom? And I agree that you have your right to your opinion, but you start to value mine. Because that's what our community has been saying for so long. Just listen to me. Forget the news. Forget all of them. I'm talking to you. Listen to me, because it's me and you that have to live together, not them. What happens if you wind up in an urban environment and your truck breaks down? What you gonna do? Call your other homies from the woods? But if you had a line with people like me, that's where my network is, across this country, right? But you wouldn't even have access to that because you were trying to be a jerk on social media, and you didn't realize, like, damn, I broke down in the middle of St. Louis, shit's looking bad, scary. I could make a phone call and have 10 people around you in 15 minutes, right? Same thing I would hope you would do for me. If I'm down here stuck, Like, yo, I don't know if these dudes are racist or not, but they got a cross, they got white shit. I need some help. And I'm not saying people in the woods are racist, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I should be able to call up on you for assistance too. So my overall goal in that is to let you know, guys know, we should not be leveraged against each other. But we also should not be in fear of correcting anyone that's wrong. The same way if somebody said to me, you're white, you're evil, and they said that to me, I'm going to correct them. You have to show me that person's evil deeds. The same way if somebody said to you, well, what is that black guy that was talking to you guys doing about the 13% versus the 52? Well, let's see you put over 100 days back into the household. Let's see you give over $145,000 back to community efforts. Let's see you do that. And then I'm still trying to be a firearms instructor. I'm still trying to be an entrepreneur. I'm traveling the country, stopping in places like this, trying to spread the good word. No, what are you doing to fix relationships? What are you doing to bind freedom? As a matter of fact, one would ask, what are you doing to help those Americans stuck in those areas that need assistance? Maybe they can use your resources. All this shit that's going on today, I've been soaking it in. I ain't been able to watch a lot of it, but I want to learn some of that game because I want to be able to take that back to people that normally are afraid to come here and get it, right? But we can fix America. We can absolutely do that starting today. But we have to do that with listening to each other. Remember, everybody does not see America the same as you. That's one thing that makes her beautiful, right? So understand that my struggles and my plight might not be yours, but I'm not saying you're without them. Yours might just be different. But if we can sit and talk about how to help each other and understand each other, there will be no race in politics. There will be how do we fucking hold these politicians responsible for what they're doing to the people. That's how we get to we the people, not them the government. Start listening, learning, open your minds, hear your fellow human being out, and if they have a perspective, listen to them. That is the only way we're gonna get to freedom. Otherwise, we'll just keep fighting, and guess what? Our kids will be having the same damn conversation trying to figure out how to make it better. I believe in you, I believe in this country, I believe she is flawed, and I believe there are some evil people in it. And we all have to be able to hold them accountable if we ever truly want to get to what freedom is. That's my time.
I told you didn't want to miss that one. Yeah.
Hey, I didn't give you guys like my website and stuff.
Yeah.
All right. You can stand next to me. It's okay. It's okay. All right. So I do encourage you to engage with me. Okay, I encourage you to, all right? Only thing I ask people to do, if you got a question or something, man, just be responsible. Especially if you ask me on social media, don't make me flame you. Just, because I will. So, to be in contact, the website is nootherchoice.com. That's my firearms training company, nootherchoice.com. On there is the email, but you can email me at info@nootherchoice.com. If you want to talk to me directly and you don't want my team to see the email, my initials, KD. So Kevin Dixie, KD @nootherchoice.com, okay? And on Instagram and all your social media stuff, it's The Real NOC for No Other Choice. So The Real NOC for No Other Choice. So don't hesitate to reach out. Go on the website, get some swag. There's also a shirt over there that says, don't make me act uncivil about my civil rights. I like that one. Don't mandate me to madness. I like that one. And yes, white people, if you're asking, you can wear the Harriet shirt. So don't be afraid to wear it.
White people can wear the Harriet shirt. All right. Thank you, Kevin, so much. I hope that you all were uncomfortable for parts of that. Because that's how we grow. And I would hope that we never make it through a Self-Reliance Festival that we are not uncomfortable about something and realize, well, shit, I gotta deal with that. Or I have to address that. So this made me think of something before we move on, and we're gonna shift